Hey, everybody, welcome back to Conversations in Ken's Cafe. I'm your host, Ken Somerville. We have a fantastic guest who's been on our channel before, a geophysicist called Stefan Burns, who likes to travel the world, experience life and energy globally. So, Stefan, I just saw some pictures of you in Jamaica. So, why don't we start with your Jamaica trip? Because you were telling me before the show you haven't consumed any cannabis for a long time, but when you went there, you tried it out, and it was totally different.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me onto the show. You reached out for me to jump on, and that's what I like is just when it's like, hey, let's just go, let's do it. Boom, we're here, we're now. And so, hello to anyone that's watching this from my channel because we're live streaming right now too. And yeah, I just got back from Jamaica. I was there in 2017, and now it's 2025, so it's been a little bit of time. And I actually had one of my first experiences with cannabis, you could say, in 2017, because when I was there, I had never smoked anything before in my life. And we were like in the deep jungle at this point of our trip. This is for the Science Channel show, Secrets of the Underground. We were exploring a few different things in Jamaica. We were exploring Captain Morgan, and then there was this Scottish murder mystery from like the 1600s, and then we were also just in general kind of exploring like the island and treasure and this type of deal. And so we went out to this part deep in the jungle with the sinkhole, and the locals were out there, and I mean, most of Jamaican locals, they drink, they smoke, and then they also smoke weed. So they're having a party
Yep,
24/7.
they're relaxed. What can we say?
Very relaxed. Have you been there?
No, I haven't had the opportunity.
You would love it, man. So on that first trip, one of the locals actually offered me a hand rolled joint. And I never smoked before, and this is when I had my normal job still. So I was like, I don't want to get drug tested after having come back from Jamaica, and then I lose my normal gig, which is, the TV show doesn't pay much. So I turned it down. Though looking back, I have a little bit of regret of not trying that, because I think it would have been a perfect first experience. But regardless, I turned it down, and then that was kind of in my mind as I did start to experiment with it later. And just having gone back, I mean, I guess you could call it a tea break. I hadn't had any cannabis since 4th of July, 2024. And that was the last experience of a few that basically pushed me away from it, because it was just like clearly not working with my body at the time. And it was just making me just mentally slow and kind of careless. I hurt myself a couple times. And I don't necessarily blame cannabis. I blame how it was grown. And that's really now cemented in my mind because of this Jamaica trip where I did dip back into it. And there, I mean, you can see how it's grown. And as we were talking a little bit off stage, is that it's technically illegal there, but in reality, it's legal. So it's widespread, and basically everyone can grow it. And there's certain areas that are better.
Yep.
And at the same time, there are certain socioeconomic pressures. Because it is illegal, you can't set up these huge grow operations like with like greenhouses and all that.
Yep.
But everyone does have access to like a little plot of land, really good soil. I mean, the best soil, super rich in nutrients. They mine bauxite there, so it's super dark red soil, volcanic. Great enough water because it rains pretty often. Good sunshine. The sea is right there. So basically, everyone's growing it biodynamic. Or if they are using stuff, it's not that much. Very few people are doing this whole kind of chemistry experiment with it.
Yeah.
So almost everything gets biodynamic. Everyone's growing their own varieties, and a lot of it's seeded because it's just all this pollination that's happening, and it's just really good stuff. And so we had some, and all of a sudden I had this burst of creativity come back to me, which is amazing. Different neurons kind of talking to each other. And I mean, there's always some things that happen with cannabis. For example, like your blood pressure goes down, so you have to be mindful of that. Heart rate goes up. These things. I think it produces like a little bit more mucus and head pressure, things of this nature, at least for me. But I didn't feel careless. I didn't feel stupid on it. And I was like, I think it's just the way the island, it has certain energies, the way it's grown, it's very natural there. And that was just, I was happy to dip back into it and kind of reaffirm the fact that this is a sacred plant, right? And not just
Yep.
uh, something that's not there really actually for your spiritual growth, if, like an illusion or something.
Well, and you have to understand that, and I took it down to cell division, guys, where it doesn't matter what plant it is or whether any organic life form, ourselves included, it all comes down to cell division for anything to grow. And that's controlled by the biology. And the biology in Jamaica hasn't been damaged the way it has been in a lot of other soils globally. So you're getting the true essence. You're getting genetic perfection when it's allowed to grow that way. And then, of course, the energy side of it, Stefan, my brother, is those people down there, they're not stressed. They're not going into a grow with anger and bad
Mm.
energy. It's all positive energy. So you're ingesting that positive energy that's been put into growing the plant, because it's not just a matter of, having all the components for the plant. It needs the energy, and it doesn't just come from the sunlight. It's
Yeah.
coming from the Schumann resonance. It's coming from those different frequencies and vibrations surrounding the environment. And Jamaica is a beautiful place, and most of the people that are growing there are very positive, happy people, as you know.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly right. That's something I picked up on like a long time ago. Is the energy imprints? Psychedelics
Mhm.
they're like energy sponges. So whereas other
Yeah.
things are a little bit more resistive to that, and so they pick up the energy of who grew it, the nearby environment, also who, let's say, like carried it around for a while. And so I
Mhm.
think that's really important. You can't just, let's say, buy this stuff or get it off anybody. I think you need to vet the energy of the person and kind of do a little bit of a backtracking as to, like, its progression from the ground, hopefully, to you.
Mhm.
And it can also be imprinted with energy very easily, consciously. Like you can even just hold something in your hands, whether this is
Yeah.
cannabis or like mushrooms or something, and put an intention into it, and it will carry that for you. And so,
The water
right,
you drink.
exactly, yeah, all
Yeah.
this stuff. And so, right now, we have Jupiter really nice appearing in the evening sky. And we'll have Jupiter go Kazemi, which is where the sun reaches Jupiter and no longer will be in the night sky. That's going to happen sometime like June or July. But right now, it's really nice in the night sky. And so
Mhm.
Jupiter's like this big benefic energy, really good out there for you. Supreme fortunate energy. And so I was just putting out some prayers to Jupiter, like, hey, Jupiter, like, make sure, like, if you can help this whole experience out, let's make it good, right?
Yep.
And we were out there, and we're just enjoying the night sky. And I saw this crazy shooting star. We're talking, I noticed some things astrologically that's not talked about that I know of in terms of
Mhm.
modern astrology, but definitely would have been the way they practiced astrology like 12,000, 20,000, 100,000 years ago.
Mhm.
So I'm excited to share that soon.
Cool.
So I was talking to Jupiter a lot, up there in the sky. Turns out the dog at the place I was staying, his name was Jupiter, right? So you get these sort of synchronicities that really
Yep.
affirm to you that you're on the right path. And so, yeah, it's a great trip.
Well, and I saw you were with a group. You were diving into those holes on your Instagram, and uh, there's so much of positive influence that comes from the universe as a whole, and then from us especially, because we can actually touch that energy. We can grasp that energy, mold it, and that's the positive energy of growing, whether you're growing plants or yourself or you're just your natural energy. A lot of people don't understand that this body is just a conglomeration of cells put together by the biology. Our essence, our aura, our sacred being, however you want to portray it, is that connection of energy from the cosmos attached here to learn, to grow, to experience. And that's where, Stefan, you go all over the world, brother, and you find these different spots that have different energies, different flows. So what are you seeing, on a global scale as you travel is different in the air energies in different areas for different people?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many ways you can take that. Uh, there's like the earth energies, and you could talk about like earth grids and ley lines and things.
Mm-hmm.
A really basic one, which is not tangent to your question, but not maybe exactly what you were thinking, but it's important, is just even the difference between 50 hertz power from the power
Mm-hmm.
grid and 60 hertz power. And I'm making some connections there because when I was in, just to keep it really simple, when I was in Germany, they have 50 hertz power.
Right.
This is last year, last like April and May. I was having some gut problems before in Bali because of some of the food problems there. Once I got to Germany, all of a sudden it like got way better. And I was like, this is great. Like, this is what it should be. And then when I got back to the States, I mean, I eat really good. I'm really solid on my diet. And
Mm-hmm.
then things just weren't as optimal as they were in Germany. Germany was like 100% perfect. I felt like a good German guy, right? Like, by the book, everything strict, perfect, done. So all of a sudden, I'm like, why is this slipping? Well, on this trip to Jamaica, all of a sudden, everything bounced right back to perfect, even just within like 24 hours. They're on 50 hertz power too, whereas here in the States, it's 60 hertz. So I'm
Right.
not 100% clued in. Like, I'm not 100% like definitively sure on this, but I think there may be some sort of ion resonance that's different at
Mm-hmm.
60 versus 50. Because I know
Which
about
makes sense.
how different ions can, they resonate with these different extremely low frequency waves. And so there's probably an ion. This is my hypothesis. There's an ion that probably gets activated at 60 hertz that doesn't at 50. That's more
Mm-hmm.
implicated with the gastrointestinal system. But I'm just trying to figure out why I'm observing these things, right? Because I just like make notes of this stuff. So that's just like a very basic one, where if you all of a sudden jump in a different country that has a different power grid and their frequencies are different, then you may notice a change from that. But then there's also the energy of the people, how like weather affects that. Like going back to Germany during the winter, they're all kind of depressed, and the German people are great. But I landed there in February in
Mm-hmm.
2023, and I immediately felt that energy shift, having come from California to Germany. I was just like, whoa! Like people here are definitely like they've had to like drop. The engine's not revving up. It's like idling now, and they're just
Mm-hmm.
waiting for summer to come around to like pick them back up. And so there's these solar influences, and I think
Mm-hmm.
like a balance of the elements is really important. Like if having sunshine, but also getting rain every now and then, and just kind of having this more balanced conglomerate of the different earth elements: wind, water,
Mm-hmm.
sun. I think that's all really important too. Um, so, did you want me to go more specific than that, or?
I think that's great because let's get back at just pull it back to the 50 and 60 hertz difference
Mm,
in those frequencies in our bodies. Each organ has a different frequency range for health. So I'm wondering if that is part of it because you're talking your gastrointestinal. I'm wondering if it works better at that 50 hertz than a 60 hertz, just because the biology uses that energy, your gut biome, to break down what you've ingested to move those nutrients, through your body to build new cells. I'm wondering if the efficiency range of the 50 hertz resonates more with the gastrointestinal tract than the 60 hertz. I'll have to reach out to some doctors and see if I can figure that one out, uh, because every organ has those different frequency ranges for optimal health. I'm, wondering if that's what you were experiencing. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there's probably multiple things, or at least multiple possibilities. You can look at
Hmm.
ion cyclotron resonance, and so therefore the different ions and what
Hmm.
waves they naturally resonate based off of their. It's based off of their atomic weight and then their charge, and that's how you calculate that. But then there's also, for example, as you mentioned, just like cellular resonance and how different cells or maybe even organelles within a cell have a specific frequency resonance, and maybe it's discrete enough to differentiate between 50 and 60. Then we know this for sure. Microbial resonance. How does a bacteria or a fungal cell or any of these things, how do they interact with the electromagnetic field? And we see very clear connections between bacteria and extremely low frequency energies. And
Hmm.
the current estimate is that we have 10 times more bacteria than human cells. They only
Oh, it's
make up
much
like,
higher than 10 times, Stefan. It's the percentage of human cells in our body compared to microbial cells. We're running like we're 10%, they're 90%. All we are is a genetic representation of the cells, but everything in our body is actually ran by the biology. That's what I was saying earlier. It's the frequency, the vibration, the resonance, the different wavelengths. And you were talking about that. MIT just did a recent study where they looked at early morning and late evening, and the frequency of light coming through the atmosphere is into the far reds. And a lake, instead of having one molecule of water evaporated at a time, it was having sheets of water come off of the molecules to move. So when you're talking the different resonance, the different wavelength of light coming from our sun, the morning and the evening, that's where your sun gazers, that morning and the evening, you're literally charging the water in your cells at those times by doing that. And we have Gerald Pollock, the fourth phase of water, coming on this coming Monday. He's discovered a lot of uh, very interesting things with the negative and positive energy of the water molecules being able to move the flow through our bodies. So, like, take a look at a tree that's 150 feet tall. How does water move from the bottom to the top? You would need a huge pump to move that, where by the charge of energy coming off and infusing the water molecules, you're actually creating almost like a magnetic levitation that actually pushes the water up to the top of that tree, just like a platelet, a red blood cell. There's no way that blood cell can move to the tip of your finger. The capillaries are too small. Yet this, what they call he calls easy water, compresses that and allows it to flow through that capillary to get to your fingertip. So the vibration, the Schumann resonance, the other things that affect, like Jupiter is affecting the energy flows, these are all in correlation to how everything works. Consider each of your cells has billions of water molecules. The energy around you and your energy, your thoughts affect that energy. So that's why I always tell people, smile at everybody, keep everybody happy, because everybody lifts that positive energy, and then your health actually improves with that positive energy.
yeah, yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. I've noticed that there's been a lot of, well, I think there's a lot of people that aren't doing this. Let's just say that.
Mm-hmm.
But just I've noticed aggression from people over the past 2 weeks that uh, is from some sort of place of wounding or something. I don't know. But if you look at the astrology, we have Venus retrograde, and that's one of
Mm-hmm.
those archetypal signatures associated with that. Is that relationships start to fray apart? It's in Aries, which is like a very fiery, martial, war type energy. And so there's this resonance right now between what I'm seeing with the astrology and also just how people are acting. And then there's also Mercury retrograde, so there's this breakdown in communication. And so some of this has been directed at me from multiple people now, and I'm like, there's a part where I could respond back in some sort of snappy manner or something clever, right? But what's the point? Like, I see where it's coming from, and it's not going to help anything. And I also want to extend grace to these people. They may not take it. They may not even recognize it. But I want to extend grace to these people because, I've made plenty of mistakes in my life where I can recognize that, 6 months ago, I was wrong on that. And so long as you're willing to accept the truth and put aside your ego and your past ego, you could say, and just like carry forward as a new reborn individual, then there's no problem. At least you would hope there's not. But to build some sort of like conflict with someone else could probably entrench them even more. And so, there's a lot of energies active right now, and how we contribute to these then alters and shapes the overall field. And I'm very much a believer that your individual choices will then reflect outwards across your entire life, and also at the collective scale. And so if you make good decisions, then you'll notice that you have this sort of positive sort of energy in general in your life, and also, let's say, societally unfolding. And so being mindful of things like that is important. There's just a lot happening right now. I think it's maybe a little bit too much for some people. So just looking for like an outlet, like a pressure relief valve. And that's what it's a nice time just to kind of pull back a little bit. That's why I was happy to do this trip. It's interesting that you mentioned water, because I've been reading this book about plasma. What's the name of it? I had the book right over there. It's flipped upside down. It's like A New Order of the Universe by Robert Temple. It's on plasma dynamics. And so a lot of the stuff that I'm encountering, I already have some basis on, but there's some stuff in there which is just helping to expand my horizons, which is good. It's talking about how basically plasma, or these supercharged ions, they can form coherent structures, and it can be very, very complex, just as complex as biology. And therefore, it's very possible, I also agree with this, that's very possible that there is some basis of life, just not in a carbon-based way, that is inherent with plasma. But they were talking about how plasma is able to make these coherent structures across all these different scales and do all these things. And I was reading that, I was like, plasma is not the only one that can do it. It's also not just our own body with DNA. Like, water has all those different structures as well. So water's like raising its hand over here. It's like, yo, I got that too.
They're talking about making computer chips using water to store all the memory, because people think of genetic codes. It's a huge amount of information, yet every single cell in your body has your complete genetic code for you and all the biology that exists in your body as well. So I like getting into plasma. You can get into quantum biology, which is, that much deeper and deeper. Get back into the plasma, though. Sorry for interrupting. I just had to throw that out there.
Oh, no, it's great. I mean, just this kind of the point I was driving to is that we see like these coherent, orderly dynamics that give rise to, let's say, like life and consciousness at our plane of existence, which is material. Then we also see that at a little bit of a level of existence that's a little bit closer to plasma, which is water, because it can also form water vapor. It's kind of this transition zone. Water molecules are very tiny, right? They're not that large. A single DNA double helix is like completely hydrated and packed in with water all around it. And then if you get even more energized, then you can still have these orderly, coherent dynamics with plasma, Coulomb crystals, and all this stuff. And so there's obviously like this fractal nature. And with the universe, it's almost like, it doesn't matter which energy state you choose, we're still going to give you consciousness and let you play with that. And I just find that very interesting, that it just kind of ripples out all these different dimensions, you could say. And if you know one, then you kind of know the others to some degree. And I honestly don't think you need to go too in depth to really like know it. Like you can drill deeper into something, and yeah, you'll know it better. But in some aspects, that will lead you astray.
Yep.
And like there is something to be said about just kind of trusting that if you know one simple truth, trusting that, and then just like proceeding forward, unless you clearly need to know more detail and depth, and intuition's telling you that, then like, really drill in. But there's this debate right now it's been a 170-year long debate or more that
Just a little debate.
yeah, that the sun and weather aren't connected, or they are connected, right? Some people think there's no connection, other people think there is. And this is one of the things that people on are kind of debating me on right now on Twitter and X. And I just I'm just reading the research papers to make sure I'm like good on my side, right?
Yep.
But someone's like, I don't see how magnetic fields affect the atmosphere. And it's like, well, let's just take a step back. If you just look at Earth, if Earth didn't have a magnetic field, our atmosphere would be totally different. It'd probably be stripped away by the solar wind. We probably wouldn't have an atmosphere, right? So it's like, okay, if we step all the way back and just do the light switch for the magnetic field on or off, we see that there's a connection with the atmosphere. Now we switch, flip it on, the switch is on, that we have the magnetic field. Now we can start to dive in, if we want to, into the nuance of how the magnetic field interacts with the atmosphere. But if we go all the way out and flip that switch off, clearly there's a connection. Same thing with the climate and weather. If we were to turn the sun off, the earth would go cold and dark very, very quickly. But how does it express itself? Because it is fairly constant. They used to call it the solar constant back in like before the 70s, because they thought solar radiation was perfectly continuous. Then they had better observations that led them to realize that there's actually slight variations in total solar radiance, and then there's larger variations across certain parts of the light spectrum. But to say that there's no connection between the sun and weather, it's like, well, let's just turn the sun off really quick. Let's just do the experiment. What's going to happen? So you can have a base truth understanding of something like that, and you can dive in deeper if you want. But if you don't want to, you don't necessarily have to, so long as you don't then stray from just sharing that truth. And I feel like that's important for people to be mindful of, to be aware of, that you don't necessarily need all the answers. You don't need to keep drilling so much that you actually lose sight of that bigger picture. And that's kind of where we are as a society now, I feel like.
I think a lot of the science out there, especially as taught in universities, they're really putting blinders on the students, not allowing them to see a greater possibility, a greater picture. They're focusing them just on this narrow little path. And then you get automatons, because it's just the same stuff spouted over and over again, where if you take, like what I do in my research is I take an overview approach. So I can take different information from different genres, whether it's from treatment-free beekeeping or soil biology or soil structure, or, all of these different things. I can take that overview approach and take bits and pieces of knowledge and understanding that correlate, but I don't have to drive, as you said, deep to truly, I know that this ion affects this proton to do, and it makes this. I don't need that depth of understanding. I just need to know how it works, why it works, and how I can affect it in a positive way. Now, I do want to bring up, because we were talking about the biology and what is more in your body. So let me just share this. 20,000 human genes, 2 to 20 million microbial genes.
Oh, in terms of genes, okay, yeah.
Okay, and then just let me. There's another image here. This is from one of the presentations I did. This one here. Okay,
Yeah.
1 quadrillion resident viruses, 10 trillion human cells, 90 trillion microbial cells. We are built and maintained by the biology in our bodies because they're the ones building the cells. So it really comes down to what you are giving in both energy, frequency, vibration to those cells, and what are you consuming that your body's breaking down to feed your body for health. Now, Stefan, you're very particular about what you eat. You're particular on what you smoked in Jamaica because it had that positive energy. What would you recommend for people to look for in a grocery store? Can they feel that energy, do you think? Is it possible? I know it's possible myself, but what's your opinion on somebody going in and going, okay, this, banana has been growing with positive energy and this one hasn't. Do you think you personally can feel that?
Yeah. Though it's difficult because you said a grocery store, and honestly,
Okay.
like, I think that's just,
Farmer's market. How's that sound?
yeah, just at a grocery store in America, I'm starting to think that I'm starting to lose hope a little bit, if I'm being fully honest.
If
Um,
we had the same testing for our food in our stores as they do for the cannabis that they're selling on the market, which is extreme level, there wouldn't be food in our stores.
yeah, but I do think that if you just have a few certain loose rules, like for example, if you steer towards organic or ideally biodynamic, that will definitely help you. But also, don't get locked into a dogma. Like for example, a lot of stuff that's organic is actually just greenhouse grown, and it's also just with straight injections of like those four chemicals. I think it's phosphorus, magnesium, zinc, and one other one. But regardless, you can basically grow a plant with those four different injections, and you just have like this little foam block. There's basically no roots. I mean, you know what I'm talking about, but
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I didn't see that until I went to Iceland, and they were growing them off of geothermal heat in a greenhouse.
Mm-hmm.
But they just had these things, and the tomatoes were like, the vines were like 90 feet, 100 feet plus long. It was wacky. It's very easy to be organic under that
Mm-hmm.
certification, basically, because you just lock it off, and you don't need to use any pesticides or anything because it's totally sealed, and you don't have to
Mm-hmm.
worry about certain soil standards or whatever. So, there can be things that are organic that actually are probably the furthest away from organic in some aspects. So I go to the
Yep.
store, and not only do I look at whether it's organic or not, I'm also like looking at where it's grown. Like that's good. You're probably not going to have that type of growing in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if it's December or January and you see something was grown in Arizona and it's a tomato, you're like, that's probably almost certainly grown that way, even if it's organic, because Arizona gets cold during the winter.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like, yeah, they get some sun, but it's also, solstice or tilted far away. And so if it's grown in Mexico, though, and it's not organic, I'll look at it. You have some semblance of ideas of the pesticide residues and how easy they are to wash off. And I just look at the actual fruit, too, or the vegetable, and like, does this just look good? I've seen some organic stuff that just doesn't look healthy, and some non-organic that does. And usually it's the opposite. Usually the organic stuff looks better. But I'm not locked into that dogma, and so I choose
Good.
the stuff that just seems to be better to the best of my ability. Farmers market would be ideal, right? Or like
Mm-hmm.
in Jamaica, the vegetables and the produce in general are very expensive, so most people just grow it themselves. That's ideal.
Yep.
I recommend everyone who can to do that. And then the stuff that you can buy is from someone's garden, and so the stuff there in general looked very good. And again, it's just right from the island soil, and that's ideal. That's the best way to do it. And there, it's going to be so. I mean, the pineapple is so flavorful. The nutrients are just so much more loaded up there because they just haven't messed with their soil.
Mm-hmm.
And being a volcano, maybe I don't know how active Jamaica is, but basically, volcanoes are constantly renewing themselves. So in the
Hmm.
geologic timescale, it's all still very fresh as well.
Yeah.
So all that stuff's important. But I think, like, if we go back to the conversation about just knowing things and basic truths, like that's why I love gardening because you you can certainly read a lot of books or listen to a lot of podcasts or read a lot of research papers or talk to a lot of really interesting people and know a lot. But you learn probably the most just from actually doing it.
Yeah.
And you learn those basic truths, and you don't really need to even go beyond them too much. You can start to explore cool things like electroculture and you know
Hmm.
you know timing things with lunar rhythms, for example. But you could just go off of what Mother Nature tells you. She'll talk to you, and you just take that in, and you just let the ego step aside, and you just do what she wants, and you'll actually be rewarded for that. That's my experience.
Well, exactly. There's so many easy ways to garden if you allow yourself to. If you want to take, say, a sandy soil and turn it into a vibrant garden, there's a lot of methodologies, and like you were saying, you don't get trapped in any single genre, and that's what our channel is all about because we talk about all the different genres, whether it's regenerative, Korean natural farming, all these different methodologies are out there. They're all doing the same basic thing. They're creating biology in their soil structure, whether it's your Korean natural farming or lasagna method or back to Eden. All these different things are creating soil structure. They're creating the biology that lives there because that's the biology that actually grows the plant. I personally, guys, I don't grow plants. I grow biology. And then I let the biology build the cells of the plant, just like I don't grow myself. I just feed myself the best nutrition I can get. And then the biology in my own body breaks that down and builds healthy cells in my body. That's what we want for you guys. So if you guys do want to talk about organic growing, then the it's all about the biology channel is a channel that is amazing on information, both fundamental and next level information, new things that are coming out. But everything is based on the biology. Now, when you go to a store and you're looking at that organic, produce, etc., pick it up, smell it, feel it, and then close your eyes and see if you can sense health in that produce. If you go to your farm and you are growing strawberries and you can pick that strawberry up and smell it and you get a feeling from it. You can go to the grocery store, pick up a strawberry. Are you getting the same type of feeling? You can attune yourself to these things, just like we can attune the water to be structured water, which is healthier for our bodies because it's energetic. And that's what, when you were in Jamaica, everything around you was energized. You're talking about Germany, where in February, there it's like what I have in Alberta, Canada. We don't have the sun. We
Hmm.
don't have those rays. We're not getting out into the environment because it's minus 20, it's minus 30 Fahrenheit. You're not going outside to get that sunlight that you can get in the tropics in Jamaica year round. And that's where sad comes in. It's a lack of light in the right frequencies because we're not getting those higher frequencies. We're not getting that higher vibration. So, Stefan, you look at the Schumann resonance and you look at it reflecting off of the stratosphere, ionosphere, etc., coming back to Earth. When you, or have you looked at like a northern latitude, does it change from the equator to the northern latitude for the frequencies that are being put off?
Yeah, that's a good question. There are some changes, definitely from north to south, like northern
Mm-hmm.
hemisphere, southern hemisphere, because of the tilt angle and how lightning activity basically sweeps across the globe as we go from solstice to equinox. And most of the lightning activity is concentrated in the mid-latitude to equatorial regions. So you are going to get just a higher power density there, and then it'll kind of radiate out. And as the power drops, the frequency typically will raise up. So the average frequency I would think would be a little bit higher there. I'm sure I've read a study on it, but I would have to go back to see a specific study in terms of like the Schumann resonance in the Arctic versus, let's say, the mid-latitudes. But there is an interesting, you mentioned how these waves, they bounce off the ionosphere. Most of them do. It reflects most of these waves, but we do still measure the Schumann resonances in the ionosphere, and we can also measure them outside beyond the ionosphere. So for people that are watching that are new, the ionosphere is about 100 kilometers up, going to 1,000 kilometers up. But it can even start at 50. If it's on the daylight side, you have solar radiation, it expands it out. It's as low as 50 kilometers above the surface. But you do measure them about 1% the strength or so in the ionosphere. And there was just a research paper that came out like just days ago that provided evidence that lightning strikes can be precipitated by a cosmic ray burst. So if you get a cosmic ray coming in, very, very high energy, and then that causes what's called like a particle cascade. There's a few different terms for it. Because it's so high energy, it breaks apart one molecule that gets super energized, and it causes this cascading effect where a whole bunch of them break apart. Well, these researchers looked at the electric fields within like a thunderstorm. And sometimes the electric field was not sufficient to explain how all of a sudden you get that conductive ionized channel for the plasma to go and strike and to create the lightning, right? And so they think that it could be if you have this setup where the electric field is just slightly too weak, and then you do get a cosmic ray cascade to go through, that can provide the conductive channel for the lightning strike, and now you get the lightning bolt. And so that could be one of the predominant ways that we actually get these lightning strikes to occur in the first place, is that it's a cosmic ray that is this spark, which then leads to that big release of energy that was latent in the electric field of this thunder cell or cyclone or even just a smaller storm cloud. But that's really interesting because we think of the Schumann resonance as being created by the Earth from these lightning strikes, but if these lightning strikes are, let's say, majority being triggered by galactic rays, these cosmic rays coming in, right? And every single particle, energy is information. You can't separate the two. And so if you have that coming in, it's just a way for that energy to transmutate into something that's a little bit more biologically available. Because if you were to get blasted with cosmic rays, you're not going to be that happy.
You're going to be a little red really fast.
Yeah, it's not good for you. But if it has this way of transmuting from a cosmic ray into these atmospheric particle cascades into then a lightning strike, this plasma burst, which creates these extremely low frequency waves, then that's a way for it to get basically transition into something biologically useful. But the information, I imagine, would be preserved or just formatted differently. And so this idea that the Schumann resonances, again, are just from the Earth and within the Earth, it's like, well, if they are coming, if fundamentally the initial spark of energy is coming from out there, then this is taking that Schumann information energy and that connection that has with our consciousness and the collective and Gaia and everything, takes it all the way out to the furthest distant parts of our universe, which is really cool to think about. And so I've only just glanced at that study to get the basics. I need to read it now, but that's the gist of it. And
I'm wondering if it's just a quark coming through, and the quark's picking up the energy and punching the hole and allowing the flow to happen. Just it popped into my head, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that there's, again, if we drill into those details, I'm sure there's something that triggered that cosmic particle to happen in the first place. So at what point do you need to keep going to be satisfied?
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
I think just learning the fact, like if we zoom out again, just learning the fact that the Earth produces these electromagnetic waves that overlap with our brain waves exactly in frequency and in amplitude, not only with the electric field but also the magnetic field, both the different parts of the fundamental force of electromagnetism. You can stop there, and if you're just an average person, this isn't your like job, you can stop there, and so long as you don't necessarily go super far beyond that truth and the claims that you're making, you're good,
Yep.
right? But you can drill into things more and more. I'm sure it gets interesting. I mean, I think it is. I've drilled in a lot, but I'm sure there's a lot more. Once you go
Well, it's
quantum,
going to go
things get wild.
dimensional,
Yeah.
because there's so many dimensions that they've found. So where is it? Is it a connection of the dimensions? And, but just to let you know, I don't know if you've ever been up in the high Arctic when you were having the Northern Lights.
No,
Just
not yet.
Okay, I have been because I used to drive truck, and I used to go up into the high Arctic, and if you step out in the middle of the night, you shut your truck off and on middle of the highway, haven't seen another vehicle for hours, shut off all the lights and the noise, you can step out, you can hear the energy crackling from the Northern Lights in that latitude. It is absolutely mind-blowing. It's like you have this, not just the lights, the different colors, but the tone actually changes, because everything, energy, frequency, vibration, we produce frequency when we talk. That's how we hear each other. That energy, though, from the Northern Lights, from those ions or whatever, I think it's ions that are hitting,
Yeah.
it is actually producing different frequencies, and it's like it's singing to you. It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I need to see the Northern Lights. I've only seen like red glow. I really need to I have some opportunities for like the next everyone has some opportunities for
Yeah.
the next 18 to 36 months and even beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
But we've basically had continuous Northern Lights in the high Arctic now for like a month. It just nonstop aurora because
Mm-hmm.
the equinox, like happy equinox, by the way.
Yes. Yeah.
And to everyone watching, make sure you give Ken a follow because again, he goes into all these subjects with a whole bunch of different people. He's the best. If you want to like get into
Thank
this and just stoke that fire, then he's your guy. But the Aurora are just kind of going like nonstop right now.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there's clear connections between Aurora and Earth's global electric circuit and how that then modulates and kind of whether like super significantly or just minorly alters our weather and things of this nature. But yeah, the equinox is a big energy transition because the solstice is kind of like you're really at one point, the pendulum swing. The equinox is like swinging through the middle. So with solstice, you're like right up here and you kind of stalled out for a little bit. And then the equinox is that period of fastest transition in terms of how light is hitting the earth. It's really growing rapidly now for the March equinox for the northern hemisphere. You're going to gain like probably 90 minutes in March of sunlight going from the beginning of March to the end. Probably 90 minutes. If you're in Alberta right now.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's probably about 90 minutes, maybe 70 or 80 at a minimum that you're gaining,
Mm-hmm.
which is crazy, right? And then in the south, some people are losing the equivalent amount way down there. And so that's a big energy change, and that's the energy change that we're in right now. And so I think there are some lessons. This lesson's always out there, but if you go back to like how people are expressing themselves, I think there is a lesson right now, or just an opportunity, you could say, for people to just peacefully set aside some of the things that are clawing to get them. Conflict that is waiting there for you to engage with, but you don't necessarily, it doesn't serve you, or just news stories or narratives or things of this nature that can, encircle your mind, and it's like right now it's a perfect opportunity with the equinox to just simply just let it go. Just let that go and just step forward and push your light forward the way you're meant to, or ride that wave up and just move beyond it.
Well, I think one thing that people really don't understand or haven't really ingested is you are responsible for everything that you do. You can't be responsible for anybody else. You can't change anybody else, but you have to take responsibility for your choices. If you're choosing to be nasty, that's on you. Like Stefan's been getting some, I don't want to say hate mail or anything like that, but negative stuff. It's how Stefan reacts to that that's going to affect Stefan. The other person, it doesn't affect the other person. They may not even care. They just put something nasty out, but it's how we react. It's how we perceive things that affects us. So I know that I keep positive. I always stay positive. I help people all the time. And I know when I pass on, this biological being stops functioning and my energy goes back to whatever you think it goes back to, and I'm judged, I'm not judged on what other people said about me. I'm not judged on what other people did to me. I'm judged on how I reacted and how I did things. So you guys really need to look at who you are inside, and are you mean and nasty? Because every morning when you get up, guys, you have a choice. You can get up and be in the worst mood in you've ever had, and then just stop yourself, sit down, go, just relax, and come back to who you want to be for that day. That's you creating energy, frequency, vibration, changing your outlook. Like, have you seen Stefan where he's mad and angry and bashing people? That's not who he is, but he makes that choice every day to be who he is, to be true to himself. So you guys have to understand, don't worry about what other people are saying. Don't look at what other people are doing. It's all about you, the choices you make in response to what's happening around you, whether that's the stuff on TV or whatever is happening. It's how you react that's going to make you the person that you are. You're the only one that affects you. Don't allow others to change who you are and how you react. So, sorry, I kind of went off on a sidetrack.
No, such wise words, and they're simple but profound, and I think sometimes we lose sight of that. And yeah, it's good to get a reminder. So I love it. I love it. I do think, I mean, one of the comments was that they say someone like how someone responds to basically just speaks about them, right? And not necessarily about you. And people have noticed that as well. So it's really when you like kind of lash out in this way, or if someone does, let's just say, to keep it more general, ultimately energy will work back to them to then work with. And yeah, there's this really no point to feed it. I mean, the one thing that like I take a little bit of a problem with, but there's a constructive way. Yeah, there's a constructive way to work with this, is when, like, for example, one of these things was I was talking about the connection between solar activity and weather. And there's been 150 years of research plus on this, right? 150 plus years of research on this, but it's still being researched into because it's one of the most multifaceted, complex subjects. So it's like we're still toddlers here. But there's definitely a connection, as we talked about the light switches earlier, right? So someone called me a pseudoscientist for that. And I'm more just an educator presenting some of this information. People can do their own research and make up their own mind. But what I don't like is that by calling me a pseudoscientist, you're also calling all the foundational people that helped establish the field of atmospheric science and also heliophysics and geophysics and all these other people, you're calling them pseudoscientists too. And that's the problem that I have, because there is a lack of respect that exists right now, which is, it's an epidemic. And yes, people in the past have done bad things, but by God, there are so many amazing individuals who devoted their life to incredible things that made the world a so much better place than it is now. We are sitting on their shoulders, and they are sitting on the shoulders of their ancestors, and so on and so forth. And the only reason we're on top of the mountain that we are right now, or as high up on this ladder that we've climbed, is because primarily of their efforts. And so when you cast shade on these people, that's when I have a problem. And so that's not necessarily going to, cause me to blow a fuse or something, but that encourages me to then go deeper and make the educational content that adds more evidence to what I think is the case. And I'll just do more research. And if I end up with the research and I'm like, actually, this looks like it's not correct, then guess what? That helps just to inform my position. But I just really not a fan of people so blatantly and callously just kind of pushing this stuff out and not being mindful of the repercussions as it relates to the achievements of our forefathers. Because we have everything to thank them for. And just because it was in the past doesn't mean that's not important and relevant now. And I guess I try to keep a little bit of a mindset that is connected to that, because it's really important. And if you just get lost in the minutia of the day-to-day, then you stop to see some of the bigger picture and what's really important in life, like some of the wisdom that you shared earlier. And so that is one thing that will kind of get me if you start to if you do that. But there's like constructive ways to work with that, right? It's just a question of, okay, clearly we just need to educate people more. So this live stream is doing that in and of itself, which is good. But
well, now we know what's one of Stefan's buttons, guys. Okay, so don't push Stefan's buttons because he will bite. Okay.
I can, but yeah.
But you're very. I was going to say you're very poignant on the point of what's come before is only the foundation. It's been the climbing the mountain. It's the building blocks that have come before that have allowed us to reach the understandings that we have now. And if people are disregarding that and disrespecting that foundation, it's frustrating. Like I know that all of the different genres of growing are all based on the one simple fact of adding biology, but these people get set in their mindset where anything that isn't, say, I'm going to say Jadam, just out of a name, one of the names. If it's not Jadam, it's no good. You can't do this. You can't do that. No, broaden your horizon. That's where I was talking earlier about people, having those blinders on. Stefan allows himself to experience it all. You go through research papers from everybody and correlate the data to come up with your own opinion on what the truth is going to come out to be. But a lot of times we didn't have the science, or not necessarily the science, the equipment to see the truth. Those equipments are being developed at amazing rates now with technological advances. That's where we should go next. What are you seeing in the technological side for advancement on what you're looking at?
Well, just there's been a transformation in how we understand the Earth because of satellites. Just even some of the first satellites that were sent up, all of a sudden the picture got so much clearer, and better understanding of Earth's energy budget and things of this nature. Of course, we also have a satellite problem. I made some videos on that. But regardless of that fact, like getting that data has been very useful. I think our transformation well, this is not, I think. I know our transformation of our understand the universe is going to transform if we send out a lot more probes into the solar system.
Mm-hmm.
And like, God bless everyone that has done that work and has sent off various probes to Jupiter and Saturn and certain asteroids and, Mars and Venus and Mercury and more. But we could, if you were to expand that, let's say like 100x, like our understanding of the solar system would just be so
Mm-hmm.
mind-blowingly different than now that it'd be incredible. And so I think we need to invest some of our resources. I think we'll see a lot more return by investing our resources into just simply acquiring fresh, like exploratory data, you could say, versus right now we have a lot of money and resources and human mental capacity and all these different things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Going towards this like creating models. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of these models have fundamental faults with them. And because they're not working off of truthful assumptions, because we're just maybe not aware of it yet, or there's
Mm-hmm.
sometimes things like political motives can develop, right? Like, I mean, if we go very simply to the climate thing, I'm not going to say that us changing our atmosphere composition in terms of the ratio with oxygen and carbon dioxide, I'm not going to say that doesn't have an effect, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not the only thing. We also have the sun as a major variable in terms of climate and weather and stuff. And it's both, right? It's a whole bunch of things other than that as well. But there are certain political forces that are pushing people to believe that it's literally just CO2. And that is just, there's some truth to it, but it's not encompassing of everything. And so if you start to base these models just off that as just an example, you're not going to be accurate with them. And look at how much money and time, and then you start to build conferences off of these things, and then you start to have different legislation built off of these things.
Mm-hmm.
When you're starting to get really abstracted away from the reality. And if we just had a little bit more focus in terms of just like, let's just collect the data on a more widespread scale and
Mm-hmm.
figure out a way to process it more simply, I think that's the direction forward. And so, like, one of my objectives with my life is to basically create an Earth observatory and have a whole bunch of different geophysical observation stations around the globe and
Mm-hmm.
have that be its own independent network that's not tied to any sort of government or like third party influence, you could say. And
Yeah.
then I imagine we'll utilize the resources that are available, like, machine learning and stuff in order to process that data in a way that is fairly lossless. So we hopefully don't lose the detail and stuff and its
Mm-hmm.
intelligence. So it's not like making erroneous calculations or assumptions or things. And then just to kind of effectively broadcast that in a fairly open source manner. I mean, you need to have the company be profitable so you can stay alive. But
Mm-hmm.
other than that, not have it be tied down or tied up with all this other stuff that is maybe connected to things that don't really care about the central core mission of let's just understand what's happening. And so I think we're going to see a lot of decentralized movements like that in the
Mm-hmm.
future. And so there's a lot of centralized objectives that are occurring right now. I mean, we have these lunar landers on the moon that just touched down, a whole bunch of satellites being shot off, things of this nature. But I think by the end of the 21st century, it'll come into clear focus that some of the most pioneering work was actually done in an independent manner. That's what I
Mm-hmm.
think.
Well,
That's what I hope for, at least.
I think I agree with you 100% because it's not just in your sciences, but in my sciences, into the biology, into crops, etc. All the scientific work being done, if you look at the back end funding for all of those, that's going to be your pharmaceuticals, it's going to be
Mm.
your fertilizer companies, it's going to be all these entities that are making money off of these products. And how can you have an honest assessment of, say, a brand new product that's chemically based when it's the chemical company paying the scientists to do the work. You can't have that. There is no independent science on it. It's bought and paid for science. That's where, I don't watch mainstream media. I don't pay attention to that stuff at all. I get my news and my education from people like us, Stefan, online talking about this. But I don't just stop there. I don't just listen to Stefan Burns on this topic. I'll listen to 8 or 9 or 10 different people, draw all that together to form the opinion that I want to have. I'll find the voices that are I feel are speaking the truth, and then I'll follow those voices and help be guided by that in my life. So guys, I tell people, listen to many voices, pick the ones that resonate with you, and then follow those people. So if you guys see on my left hand side here, I'm not sure if you can read it. It says, "One lit candle can light many without ever diminishing its own light." If you have knowledge, you have information, be a lit candle like Stefan is, like I am, like my other hosts on this channel on our other shows are. We give information for free. We try to give the best information possible so that you guys cannot have to go through the trials and tribulations. If you're going into gardening that other people have, you have the advantage. That's what Stefan is doing. He's allowing you to see what he has discovered. So he's not being paid by these companies. I'm not being paid by these companies. We're giving you an overview of what we understand to help you, but become a lit candle. Gather that information, share it with others, especially when it comes to your health, because health is the only thing that really matters. It doesn't matter if you're a multi-trillionaire. If you are just laying in bed and have no life because you're not healthy, all that money doesn't matter. So we're sharing information that can help you be healthy. Stefan talks about the energy and multiple topics in that. I'm talking about biology, growing plants, because you need that in order to ingest and build your healthy body. You can't reach genetic potential. And look at Stefan, that young buck there that's just healthy. He's getting his genetic potential.
I hope so.
Okay. But he's also consuming vibrant, healthy foods on a regular basis. And he has a vibrant, healthy energy around him because that's what he has created. That's what we all need to create. So if you want health, you have to have healthy food, which comes from the soil, which comes from the biology that started it all. We have biology. If there's a meteorite that hits our planet, there's biology living on that meteorite. Okay. The energy, Stefan talked about it. There's information coming through in those frequencies coming from outer space that are helping or hindering us. It depends on how you want to look at it. But it's all coming down to, if you want a healthy physical form, it's all about the biology, the substances you feed it, and that's in the air around you. Guys, most people don't understand, every time you breathe, you're breathing in a massive biology. Every time I move my hand, I'm moving biology around and it's touching my skin, it's going into my cells. So your environment and a healthy environment is very important. And Stefan, I'll let you talk on that for a few minutes here. Is that healthy environment? You've been around the world. You've seen places that are healthy. You've seen places that aren't healthy. You've been on top of a mountain where you could feel the cell tower miles away.
Mm-hmm.
So where would you suggest for people, or how do you suggest for people to help alleviate the bad and bring in more good around them?
Well, I mean, I live in San Diego specifically because it's close to the water.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the ocean is very purifying. And we have a lot to thank the ocean for because it's remediated a lot of our mistakes, you could say. I'm not sure how long it will continue to do so, but I think, the ocean's more resilient than we think. But, it's putting out all these ions into the air, and
Mm-hmm.
the Pacific California dynamic specifically is always bringing the wind and traveling it east usually. And so you're always getting fresh air off the ocean, and there's
Mm-hmm.
nothing really to the west of us, right? So, I mean, you have to go all the way to Hawaii, and that's further north, or it's not further
Mm-hmm.
north, but regardless, there's basically nothing. There's basically nothing to the west until you
Yeah.
get to like Japan, right? And so, I think a place like that is really important. Really good air. I only drink spring water. I think your
Mm-hmm.
water is the second most important thing, other than air.
Mm-hmm.
As we touched on at the very beginning, the EMFs are important. So I'm like
Mm-hmm.
figuring that out now because I realize I need to like probably go off grid and have my own power generation and figure that out very specifically. Bury all the cables. I think that's very important.
Mm-hmm.
So finding some way to manage your environmental EMFs. And if you, I mean, there's certain places that just seem to be in general in better resonance. If people live a little slower and they're a little bit more in tune with nature and just the culture is a little bit more about that, I think that naturally happens when you're in these areas that have a lot of natural beauty to them and they're not degraded and they're not necessarily just like a drive-through place. Um, those areas also have a natural beauty to them, but maybe they're used now at the expense of like more commercial endeavors, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
But your quote on the candle, I think kind of feeds into this a little bit because, again, I think that how you act will then reflect around you and it allow you to either prosper or not, karma
Mm-hmm.
basically. And I also believe that if you're this candle and you're lighting other candles, right? I
Mm-hmm.
think the universe will see that and will continue to make sure the candle doesn't run out, right? It'll keep
Yep.
adding a little bit of wax on the bottom, and so that candle stays lit at least for a long while.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really important because if you do start to really make this change, whether this is just at your community level or whether it's in a more public way, which some people just have a more natural aptitude for. Everyone has their own gifts; they'll find their way into it if they really ask the universe, and it'll get provided. But yeah, lighting your candle or lighting other candles doesn't necessarily like diminish your own. And I think that candle does actually get replenished. And so when you do that, then I think that creates this vortex kind of positive energy to flow
Mm-hmm.
into your life, which then also spreads out. And that's really beautiful. And I think that will kind of remediate a lot of things. Like you can look at things materialistically, and sometimes you need to, like just very depending on kind of the energies of the moment, right? Sometimes you need to look at things very analytically and materialistically to kind of solve the problem, or you need to have some discipline yourself. But I also do leave room for some problems to kind of get remediated because you're just so focused on a mission, and that mission's in alignment with spirit and source that everything else will kind of get fixed for you because like you are 100% focused on this. And so I think that's also one way to kind of remediate some of these things, and that you can start, if you can start to work at a higher energetic dimensional level, then you can maybe get around some of these more materialistic constraints. It's not like there's a study for this. There's probably
Well,
never going
there
to be a study
are,
for
but
that.
nobody
But
believes them.
yeah, I mean, you have like the work of like Steiner and stuff,
Yep.
and so I mean, it's not like no one's ever thought about this or looked into it. But yeah, it requires just a little bit more faith, I guess you could say. But I
Well,
think that's
whatever the
easily
human mind
cultivated.
can conceive and believe, it can achieve, but it's that belief. You can walk on water, but you have to believe that you can, and you have to have an unwavering belief that you can, because I have known people that have stepped through the air and all of a sudden crash back down going, what did I just do? That's not possible, yet they just did it, but they weren't thinking about it. It's a child's imagination. When we can get back to that child and that belief that that refrigerator box that you just got delivered and you take the box outside, that now is a fort, and you're out there, you're doing all this adventure, and you can see it and picture it in your mind. You create that. That is reality at that moment. And that's where most people don't understand. Like, there was someone in the chat saying, that energy, you can grasp it. It's real. That plasma is real. That is so true. You can manipulate what is around us for your own use, whether that's an energy healing, whether that's so many different aspects, but it's all here, where you have to truly believe that you can do it, because then you're just going to do it because you know you can do it. It's amazing how it works in conjunction with your true beliefs. And that's where I don't talk about religion. I talk about, our species. I don't talk about colors. I talk about our species. We are human beings joining together in energetic endeavors, like Stefan and I are right now. We've joined forces and energetically to bring this out to you, and we can all do that. We don't have to be in the same room. We're on the same planet. Understand, guys, energy and knowledge flowing through the atmosphere is instantaneous. You look at mushroom guy, Paul Stamets.
Yeah.
He did an experiment where took a nuclear isotope and he stuck it into the ground. He had students a significant distance away monitoring. As they injected the isotope into the ground, the monitoring device went off instantaneously. It's all so easy to understand when you look at everything around us is a neural network. The air, the soil, everything communicates. Just because we can't do it, because we're not attuned to that, doesn't mean it isn't happening around us constantly. And I have my beautiful wife is going to ask me something, so I'm going to mute myself. Steph, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. Well, let's look at what's happening with the chat, and I can maybe answer some questions. Just to see what people are saying. I really like the thoughts on lightning, and I feel you, makes sense what you say, totally. Frequency generators. Yeah, that's a question a lot of people have, is about frequency generators and whether you can beneficially modulate your environment with something like that, like a Schumann resonance generator. And in general, I think there's a lot of room for growth there, and I think there's probably some insane, awesome things that you could do, but I'm very much a naturalist. I'm not big on creating even more of these energy fields. I think first and foremost, you should probably get away from all the electro pollution before you then maybe start to play with it. Like, if I had unlimited resources, I would buy a massive plot of land. I would take that completely off grid in the center of that property, or something super isolated from everywhere else. And that, you need some electricity to run your thing. So you bury all those cables so you're not creating too much electro pollution, because if it's buried, you'll get very little. So you can have your house and have, your blender and your laptop plugged in and all that, and still, in general, have a pretty EMF free place. If I then again had unlimited resources, I would very, very much like to build some other cabin on like another corner of the property and create interesting, you could say, like maybe frequency cymatics, right? Using different magnetic fields and pulse electromagnetic fields, and see how that affects your mood. Maybe you build like a meditation chamber or something, just like some sort of mud hut with like a perfect glass ceiling or something. And so you can, at night or during the day, with either nocturnal or solar energies, work with that and play with these cymatic interference patterns, see how that affects your consciousness. I think that could be really interesting. But most people are living in an EMF polluted area, and
Yeah.
then they're turning on their Schumann resonance generator, which has an amplitude 10,000 times greater than the actual Schumann resonance, right? And they're playing also some sort of, frequency, binaural beat or something from their phone using LTE or 5G. And so it's like, at what point are you losing the benefits? Like, yeah, I mean, this
Yeah.
computer, we're on the computer right now. It emits an electric field, but I have my Wi-Fi off. So I'm
Hmm.
not running Wi-Fi. This is just over Ethernet. That helps a lot. Things like
Yeah.
that help a lot. Putting some distance between you and the laptop. But yeah, I mean, the idea of like frequency generators, or even the idea of how you can measure the frequency of specific molecules and also
Hmm.
specific herbs, like what's their resonant frequency. And then the idea of taking that further, you are able to go to, let's say, this room, this like electromagnetically shielded room, and then play that frequency of the medicine or the herb so you don't even have to ingest it. I don't know if that works or not, but that's
It
an interesting
does.
idea too.
I can't remember the particular gentleman, but he built a device where they would put a specific nutrient, say calcium, in a plate, and it would actually project the calcium out into the zone around it, that frequency, because everything has frequency. Um, I know if you ask the question when I'm on with the Andy Lopez, the Invisible Gardener, he knows the guy or knew the guy, so he would remember the name. But you can do these things. It's you look at what Tesla did when he had the metal beam and he put the frequency generator on it and almost brought down the building when he found that resonant frequency.
Yeah.
Tuning forks. The wife actually just, I think yesterday, showed me a company that has tuning forks where they've tuned the forks to different frequencies for your body, because each, like your heart needs a different frequency for health, your liver, etc.
This
They
must
have.
be biofield tuning. Is this biofieldtuning.com with Eileen McCusick?
I don't honestly know. As I said, it was Lily. We just briefly looked at it, or I briefly looked at it on the way outside. Um, but that's a potential. But she was coming down earlier. She's saying, you're nattering, wrap it up." Okay, so I think she wants to feed me supper or lunch or something.
Oh, sounds nice.
Well, guys, Stefan, um, thank you so much, my friend, for coming on and sharing your wondrous knowledge. You are an amazing man with vast amounts of knowledge and experiences globally that you've been able to share with us. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you, brother, and the same can be said of you. And yeah, let's do more of these. These open, free dialogues with no expectations or anything. I think are really, really nice. And thanks to everyone that jumped on both of our live streams. Impromptu live stream. Didn't even think about going live, but it was easy to set up. So hello, and thanks for joining in today. And yeah, wishing you well, Ken.
Thank you. And guys, for the channel tomorrow, I have Matthew Trum, I think it is, from Treetop Permaculture, coming on conversations with Ken's Cafe. Then I've got Gastronomic. Oh, I can never say it right. Anyway, another gentleman. We have some amazing guests, and I know one of our guests that's coming up, Gerald Pollock, you've had on your channel, Stefan, talking about the fourth phase of water and how to energize water. But guys, other than that, have a wonderful day. Thank you, all the people from Stefan's channel that have come on and joined in the live chat. We
Go
greatly
subscribe.
appreciate. Yep. Thank you, guys. Have a wonderful day, and we'll talk soon.